Okay, everyone. So now we are doing Unit 4, Managing Marketing Information to Create Customer Value. So this is obviously what your group assignment is on, doing a little market research project, although this unit is slightly broader than that. It looks at marketing information systems and analyzing data, and a little bit broader than your particular research project. But anyway, this audio is definitely critical to your project. The more you understand, the process, the better job you'll do of your project as well. Again, this is probably one of those areas where some of you are really experts at marketing research and done lots before, and some of you may have not done it at all. So this might be useful. Of course, market research is one of those areas that we hate being a consumer of. And what I mean by that is, when you're stopped in the street and asked, will you do market research? I don't know about you, but when I see someone approaching me in the street with a clipboard, I'm very quick to run to the other side of the road. I'm willing to risk death than rather to be sampled in market research, to be honest. And also, I really hate the way market researchers say, would you mind if you fill out the survey just for 5 minutes? It'll only take 5 minutes of your time. And then 3 days later, you are still there answering questions like, how clean were the fingernails of the employees that served you? It's like, really? So yeah, that underestimation of the time is something I find really annoying with market researchers. So market researchers are often their own worst enemy, to be honest. Very similar to market researchers, those calls that you get in the evening from market researchers, how much do you like Bell and Rogers? Please tell me, go away, they're horrible. Is those charity companies that call you up in the evenings as well. And does anyone actually answer their phone anymore to those 1-800 numbers now? Although they've got a little bit tricky, haven't they? And they tend to use local numbers, so you can't identify it's a 1-800 number. But a great story that I heard in one of my customer service seminars a couple of years ago I was doing with the BC government. Someone said they got rung up in the evening. This is a true story. I know you'll love it. They got rung up in the evening by a charity. It was a children's charity, and the guy on the phone asked the lady who was the one telling the story to me in the audience, would she make a donation to this children's charity? And the lady went quiet. And as she thought about, is this a good charity to donate to? The guy who was on the other end of the phone, however, the call center representative, thought she'd put the phone down because she'd gone silent, and he turned to the guy in the cubicle next to him and said, "The fat cow put the phone down on me." Now, of course, she heard this because she hadn't actually put the phone down, and she was raging. But before she could say anything, he put the phone down because he thought she had gone, obviously. So anyway, she remembered the name of the charity. She Googled the name. She, after a few phone calls, she got through to the customer service representative supervisor, the team leader, and she explained the story and said, he called me a fat cow, and I'm not even fat. I actually look pretty good. I'm disgusted. And the team leader, the call center representative, the call center team leader said, "I can't believe he did that. He should have put you on mute when he said it." Ho, ho, ho. And then she donated $100 to the charity. No, she didn't really. What a great story, right? Rather than saying sorry, she said he should have put you on mute. Great story. So market researchers and charity donations, definitely the kind of people we don't want to get phone calls from in the evening. So market researchers can be naughty people. So anyway, we're looking at managing marketing information to create value. The idea is that the more we understand our customer, the more we think like our customers by using marketing information rather than thinking just about them. So the more scientific we are, the better we're going to be off. So what are the learning objectives? We're going to look at how to assess our marketing information needs. Then we've got to develop the marketing information, and this can come from 3 sources. It can come from the internal data you have on customers and customer behavior already, what they buy, For TELUS, how many texts they send, how much data they use, what do the different target segments, what are their behaviors, if they switch, why they switch, internal data that we've collected already. Then market research data. This is data that we need to collect to answer some of the questions that we don't have answered. So, where internal data or marketing intelligence can't answer our questions, we have to collect primary marketing research. And then marketing intelligence. Marketing intelligence is secondary data that is out there already that we don't have to collect for ourselves. It's, maybe Statistics Canada have it, or other information that gives us information on our competitors or our customers, or how the economy is doing. Any intelligence will help us make better decisions. So, marketing information and customer insights. The idea is that we want to obtain insights into customers' behavior. It should give us fresh and deep insights. It's not about collecting more information. It's about collecting the right kind of information. And it's not usually from one particular source. We have to go through a number of different sources and collect different types of market research. Do experiments, surveys, focus groups. Often variety will give you very different answers than just using one particular methodology. Obviously, we must always remember that customers find it hard to even justify their own behavior. They often attribute the reasons they did things to things that weren't the real reason why they did it. They're just attributing their particular behavior when it could have been price rather than the fact that it was a convenient location. So we have to be very careful to take what customers say with a pinch of salt. So I think this is becoming huge, right? Behavioral science. More and more organizations, more and more governments are looking to use behavioral science, the science of human behavior, and obviously I'll build on this a little bit more in the Moments of Power in a couple of weeks' time. The idea is behavioral science is the way to go. The more we understand how people behave, what triggers their behavior, the more successful marketers we can become. Two really good examples I have in the notes there are of President Obama last year sent a very interesting executive order out from the White House saying that the American government should use behavioral science to understand its citizens more. And there are economists and marketers who understand how people behave, and we should tap into that. An amazing executive order to be sent out by the president, to be honest. And this was triggered by the fact that the UK government have been using behavioral science for quite a while. Again, click on that link, and it's been driven by an economist in the US who's been helping the US government, and his very famous book called Nudge. And the idea is that we can nudge people into the right behavior if we know how to trigger it. So, marketing insights can give us insights into behavioral science, and we can use that behavioral science to get people to behave in the ways in which they want to behave anyway, right? But in the best interests of TELUS. So, first of all, there are different parts to understanding customers and using information the right way. And actually, I did my PhD on this topic, on marketing information systems. These are information systems that exist within marketing departments, data analytics department. And this is where you collect and keep information on the customer. At Commonwealth Bank, the first year and a half I was there, I basically sat in the customer analytics department and spent so much time going through data, trying to understand how customers behaved. Really uncovered some amazing insights. Like I think I told you in the residency that high net worth customers were the least satisfied out of all of our customers. Something no one had ever really dug up before. So basically we have people working in these departments who are collecting information and using that information to help us make better marketing decisions. So it'll be interesting for me to hear in the discussion forum, how big is your marketing information systems, your data analytics in the marketing area of TELUS? Do you have data analytics people in business and consumer and TELUS Health, and what do they do? And How useful are they, and do they share the information with you? Do they have a high profile, low profile? That would be really something interesting for us to talk about in the discussion forums. Again, marketing information systems, you can spend hundreds of millions of dollars on collecting information, analyzing information, having a team of thousands of people analyzing all the data that you have, right, to make better marketing decisions. At the end of the day, it's about balancing the rewards and the benefits of the marketing information system from the costs of having it. So are we providing basically a benefit and value for money for the money that we're spending on the technology and the people, and cleaning the data and maintaining the integrity of the data? Is that basically worth the effort that you've put into managing the system? Are you getting the benefits from it? Are you making decisions that are actually adding value and providing an ROI for your company? Because this can absolutely be a bottomless pit in terms of analyzing information, and it's often quite hard to know whether you're actually making any money from the decisions that you use from data analytics. So it's a real area that you need to balance. What is the right number of people? What is the which data do we spend our money on? And what are the most important decisions that we can make coming from the data? So marketing information has three types, as I mentioned already. There's internal data, which is electronic collection of consumer and market information. Marketing intelligence, this is the systematic collection of secondary data, so publicly available information on developments in the marketplace, developments in society, what the competition are doing. And then there's market research. So market research is essentially saying, I have a problem, I have an opportunity, and my internal data and my marketing intelligence don't explain all of the information that I need to answer that particular question. And so you need to be able to collect data through market research, whether it's online surveys, focus groups, experiments, to be able to answer that particular question and fill in the blanks that you have. By the way, as you can see in all of these slides, I got a little of my own branding, Colgate University. I've created my own little university. So you see that little circular little brand there. That's my own university. So if you'd like to join my own university and quit the TELUS MBA, it's $17 per course. And you only have to complete 3 courses to get the Colgate degree. So you send me an email at Colgate University at colgateuniversity.com and send me $51 and I'll send you a degree certificate. There aren't actually any requirements, just really the cash will do. So there you go, my own university. Thank you. Market research process. So I've shared this with you already. If you're listening to this at Christmas time, that's bells, jingle bells. Thought you'd like to hear that. So yes, and the reason for the jingling of the bells is that this is the big moment. The market research process. How do you successfully go through the market research process? So we're going to talk about the market research process and the things that you need to do to be successful. And I'm going to point out the bits where most organizations go wrong. Just to give you a bit of an inside scoop into where most companies go wrong, it's usually step 1 and step 6, right? Step 1 is that marketers do not spend the time defining the problem carefully enough. And this is really where I'm trying to work with all of you in your groups to define the problem that you are trying to collect research on. If you define the problem inaccurately, or you don't spend enough time thinking through what really is the main problem that we're addressing here, then obviously all the data you collect after that is going to be an utter waste of time. Also, step 6, where marketers end up not using the information they've collected. So they prepare and present the report, and the user doesn't need it, the user doesn't want it, the user doesn't understand it. Okay, of course, lots of opportunities to make mistakes all the way through the market research process, but I need to call out those 2 steps as being particularly hazardous from a marketing point of view, and that is a learning moment. Anyway, so step one, defining the problem. We've mentioned that. Developing an approach to the problem. This is basically an understanding of, what are our research questions, what are our hypotheses that we're trying to test here. Formulating a research design. How are we going to collect the data? Is it going to be online surveys, experiments? Doing field work. So this is where you actually collect the data. Preparing and analyzing the data, what statistical techniques are we going to use? Regression analysis, chi-squared? Is it just theming the results from face-to-face interviews and focus groups? How are you actually going to do the analysis of the data and then presenting the report? And there you go. As you can see, I've written tons on this. Oh my God, I'm so good. So I've tried to carefully describe each of the steps, but then I go back and I go through them again in a minute. Wow, value for money. Okay, I haven't been drinking, by the way. So there you go. You can read all that yourself. Okay, so perhaps the most important step in the market research process is defining the goals of the problem. The core of this is understanding the question that needs to be informed by the market research. So what is exactly the key issue that you're looking at? And are you really looking at the key issue? Maybe you're looking at maybe you're collecting market research on the symptom rather than the underlying cause. And so if I was to look at my experience as a marketer, probably my main area is helping companies deliver service excellence. My second main area has definitely been of a market researcher. I've done endless market research for companies, Toyota Financial Services. For a while, and you'll find it's very scary, I was actually the face of the New Zealand banking industry. I used to do market research on what consumers thought of banks in New Zealand, whether it was a consumer or whether it was a business customer. And I used to be on the TV all the time talking about customer satisfaction. It was a hot topic at that time. It was kind of good timing. I became known as the face of the the consumer and the business customer's point of view in terms of whether they were providing good customer service and value for money or not. Then my face started to melt as I got older, and they didn't use me on the TV anymore. But and that's how I ended up working for Commonwealth Bank, because I became known as the industry guru. The banks in New Zealand started talking to me and using me for consulting, and then one of the people at ASB Bank in New Zealand became the group executive at Commonwealth Bank, and she invited me to come back. So there you go. That's how it all fits together. And that was a complete waste of 2 minutes of your life, wasn't it? But there you go. So basically, my hot tip here is make sure your face doesn't melt. Otherwise, you won't be used as a TV personality anymore. Anyway, by understanding the business problem clearly, you'll be able to focus your research on collecting the right data. The starting phase is always the key part in identifying the problem or the reason for which the research is going to be conducted. And so you cannot short circuit this process. You've got to really think through carefully. Are these the right research questions? Is this the right problem we're trying to address? Is this really the underlying issue, or maybe it's just a symptom? And we've got to dig a little bit deeper, because by misconstruing the actual management problem and the research objectives, then you're going to collect the wrong information. So that's a really hot tip for your research project. Have you really thought carefully enough about whether this actually is a real problem, whether there's another problem at play, whether there's a more interesting question that you should be asking rather than the one that you are asking? And again, we tend to throw away comments about what the issue is when we don't really know what the issue is at all. So digging a little bit deeper at step number one is really critical. Developing information, developing marketing information. So step two is developing the approach. This is the research question hypothesis, specification of information needs. Do you need secondary data? Is there secondary data and internal data inside TELUS, for example, that would answer all your questions, and you don't need to go out and collect primary market research? And so that's a really important step, and often there is data out there that you don't realize is out there, or someone else in TELUS has this information and they collected market research on it 6 months ago and spent $10,000 on it, and you should not be doing that again. So you're really making sure that whether you actually need primary data or not is a critical part of step 2. Step 3 is your research design, and this is kind of where it gets into the real detail of collecting information. This is basically where you need to decide, do I need exploratory research? And exploratory research is just how it sounds. You're exploring the topic, and so this is mainly focus groups and in-depth interviews, and you're asking broader questions where you do not need numbers, okay? And numbers won't really help you understand this issue at all. And then descriptive research, this is where you're describing what's going on. This is definitely where you'll use a lot more online surveys or telephone surveys, if anyone answers the phone, to actually collect your data. And then causal research, which is you're trying to find cause and effect between two variables. Experiments is usually the main way of doing causal research. Now, I have to tell you a really embarrassing story. I shouldn't tell you this because I'm just going to lose all credibility. But when I first started teaching market research in New Zealand in 1996, when I was 7 years old as a professor, I introduced the topic of market research, and I talked about exploratory, descriptive, and I called it casual research rather than causal. I read the word wrong, and I didn't really understand what causal research was, and so I said it was casual research, and it was research that you would do casually. So anyway, very kindly, this true story, a student came up to me at the end of the class and informed me really this was causal research and told me a little bit about it. So there you go, embarrassing moment number 18 that I've shared with you. This diagram here, I really love. It's a great summary of exploratory versus descriptive versus causal, which is, as I said, mainly experiments. And exploratory can be experience surveys, where you're asking customers to explain carefully the experience they've gone through in an in-depth way. It may be an end-to-end experience of, buying a phone with TELUS and setting up the phone with TELUS. What was their experience like? Expert research on experts. So these are gurus who understand particular processes, and you speak to these experts who can inform you. Pilot surveys, these are basically you're thinking of doing something and you want to do a little project beforehand to see whether this is going to make sense. But the pilot surveys are in-depth surveys with customers to see whether it may be a new product that you're thinking of launching, and you share that product with them, and you get them to test that product to see whether that product is going to fit the needs in which you designed it for. Case studies, so these are in-depth case studies on maybe a company has done something that you're trying to do in a marketing perspective. So basically doing little case studies. This is more done in a B2B context, where you're looking at businesses who may be customers of yours in the future and see how they operate, and doing a deep analysis of how they behave. Secondary data, qualitative data. So this is the data that exists already, but it's qualitative. And then obviously qualitative data such as focus groups, in-depth interviews. Now remember, qualitative data is the quality side, so limited number, but in a lot of details. And again, focus groups, in-depth interviews are the good example of that. But all of those things, pilot surveys, case studies on organizations, experience surveys, qualitative research, are all exploring the topic. You're not collecting numbers to statistically say that this is true. You might do 12 case studies of organizations that have implemented products like the product that you're thinking of launching, but you couldn't say that's representative of every organization who has implemented that product. Descriptive research is really the complete opposite. This is quantity rather than quality, superficial to a certain extent, but will enable you to say with statistical confidence that these things are occurring. And this is often how segmentation occurs, by collecting large numbers of surveys on people's behaviors, psychographics, demographics, and then being able to split them into segments. So observations of customers, customer panels, online surveys, face-to-face surveys, where you run across the street and hide, telephone surveys, and then secondary data that exists already, which is quantitative in its nature, numbers. And then, as we mentioned, causal research, not casually collected at all, seriously collected. So there you go, look at that. Oh my God, I've written so much for you again to explain in detail. Obviously, you also have the chapter on marketing research from the textbook. Sorry, it's a little bit old, but I think it does the basic job of describing market research in detail, and very similar to my notes, hopefully, and builds on my notes. And then experiments. Oh my goodness, I love that article that I gave you on experiments, Bank of America, and how they used experiments to try new things, come up with innovations, and experiments are absolutely underdone, if that's a word, in businesses. So I was talking to a large supermarket. I won't mention who they are. In Canada, and they did a Jamie Oliver knife promotion. Some of you may know about it. And they launched the Jamie Oliver knife promotion, and it was marginally successful. There was some good, some bad within it. They basically didn't make a lot of money from it. And one of the reasons they didn't make a lot of money was that they didn't experiment in 1 or 2 stores with that promotion before launching it across all of their grocery stores. If they'd launched it in a couple of stores, they would have ironed out the kinks, worked out the best pits, realized that it was going to cost them too much money, asked customers to collect more stamps, done some other things that were quite obvious that you would have worked out, but they didn't do that, and it was a marginal success, but it could have been a big success if only they experimented with it beforehand. Cats, you can experiment on cats because they have 9 lives as well. So cats are good for experimentation as well. They're a good part of experimenting. So experiments. The idea of doing an experiment is that it leads to a better outcome for the business. Maybe just like the example that I gave you, it means that when you roll something out, you're going to be more successful. But ultimately, it should be faster for the customer because of your experiment. It should be simpler for the customer. It should be more convenient for the customer. But by doing experiments, you're changing something from a customer's point of view that has a benefit and value with them. Customers may need to be educated about the experiments that you're running, so they understand that you're running an experiment, because they may never have seen anything like that before, and you may not be able to test the experiment unless you educate the customers in some way. Whenever we implement an innovation that's been shown to work by experiments, then the idea is that we are foolproofing ourselves against failure by testing something in a limited environment, seeing if it works or doesn't work. It means we're going to be more successful than when we roll it out. Again, the Bank of America article that I'm asking you to read along and listen to these audio notes and the market research chapter, there are 5 parts. Evaluate the idea, so basically come up with a long list of ideas of something that you could experiment, narrow that down, choose one. Plan and design your experiment based on the ideas that you think have the best opportunity for success. Implement your experiment. So let's test it, right? But I think what's really interesting is the testing part, right? And as they say in the article, it has to be for a very, very limited amount of time, right? Because these experiments could run forever, but they've got lots of other suggestions in the article in terms of how to run these experiments properly. But you've got to monitor the performance continually, report the results and interpret the results, and basically make a decision at the end as to whether you recommend this experiment rolls out across your bank branches, your teller stores, your supermarkets, your fast food outlets, your consulting practice, wherever you've tested that experiment. So I love that framework. Very simple, very scientific. I love the article on experiments simply because companies do not run enough experiments. They're either not willing to risk it at all, or they simply try it across the organization in one go, just like in the supermarket example that I gave you. Such a cool article. I hope you enjoyed it. So, how do you run great experiments? Maybe some of you are running experiments in your market research project. There's a number of golden rules. Obviously, you should always have a control group, right? If you don't have a control group, how do you know if your experimental group has been successful? You have no comparison, right? There must always be a control group. Perfect experiments have random assignment of subjects. Now, that's not always possible. Sometimes you can't randomly assign people into groups, and so that's called a quasi-experiment. But they're still very useful, right? And often quasi-experiments are actually better than randomly assigned experiments because they might mimic real life. Whereas randomly assigned experiments, they don't mimic real life at all, because the only way of randomly assigning people means you have to maybe do that experiment in a laboratory or in a computer-assisted environment where it's a little bit artificial. The idea is that it is about causality, so we are testing cause and effect relationships, which means the only way we can really do that is to test one thing. If we test more than one thing, how do we know it's not the second thing or the third thing, right? So the more you test, the less you know about whether it's succeeded or not, right? So experiments are about testing one thing only. Another thing, of course, about experiments, the Hawthorne effect, is that the people involved in the experiment shouldn't know that the experiment's going on, because often it could be just the attention that they gave. So they often find, for example, when you test drugs, the placebo group, who got the sugary pill that wasn't really the pill that had the medicine in it, the placebo group had the positive effects as well. Wow, right? So, you know, for example, when they tested the hair loss drug, which I wasn't involved in, sadly, the placebo group said they grew hair as well, even though they didn't actually have the hair loss medication. There you go. So placebo groups often, because they feel like they're part of the experiment, they start to change their behavior and see results that aren't actually there at all. So wherever we can, we want people who are involved in the experiment and in the control to know that the experiment is not going on, because if they know it's going on, the control might change their behavior and the experimental group might change their behavior as well. But totally underused in a business context. And then step 3 is we're doing the field work. We're collecting the data. We're designing the research tool. So we're actually designing our interview schedule if we're doing focus groups or in-depth interviews. We're designing our research instrument if we're collecting online data. And of course, we must always pilot test that survey instrument to see if it makes sense, to see if the people who are filling out the survey understand what the questions are asking. So reliability is a huge part of survey design. You know, is my survey actually measuring what I think it's measuring, or am I asking the questions in a way that bias the respondent to an answer which maybe is unanticipated? So pilot testing is a really critical part of step 3, and then creating the right sample. You know, making sure that you don't have too many people in your sample, because you could be wasting money. You can get statistical significance with a smaller sample, or not having too small a sample where you can't even get statistical significance either. Step 4 to 6 is where you collect the information, process it, analyze it, interpret it, draw conclusions, and report to management. Obviously, the idea of all of this is that you present data in which the people who have asked for it understand it, they understand your conclusions, they're willing to make changes based on it. If you go into the market research process and you know that the leader who's asked for that information is only doing it to validate what they're thinking already and it's a complete waste of time and money, don't do it. If you know the leader hasn't got the power or the resources to make the changes, don't do it, right? You're far better not doing any market research than doing market research that's collected and never used. So step 4 to 6 is all about understanding your target audience in terms of the person who's going to use that market research data. So you must analyze it in a way that they understand it, draw conclusions that make sense from their perspective, and report it in a way in which they understand exactly what you're saying. So there you go. It's great to have a typo on the last slide. That should say most companies are not very good at using feedback from customers. So, you know, if I'm to be brutally honest, the biggest problem with market research is the fact that most organizations collect tons and tons of market research data and they never use it. So it's a massive waste of resources. So, you know, always a great question to ask is which research data should we stop collecting? Sorry, I'm starting to lose my voice a little bit. I am so glad that I switched to doing audio rather than you know, being in the residency and you know, talking to you and, you know, writing on the board. Did you realize how bad my writing was? You know, one of the most embarrassing things as a professor for me is that I probably have the worst handwriting of anyone I've ever met. Did you see when I drew on that board? I only drew on that board once in the residency, and I didn't do it again. One of the things is I'm a little bit dyslexic, and so I don't like writing on the board because I often spell things incorrectly, and so I just kind of scribble and hope people don't realize that I've spelt things wrong. I first realized that I was dyslexic when I went to a toga party dressed as a goat, and that was embarrassing. Have I done that joke before? If I haven't, it's a good one, isn't it? Anyway, and if I have done it before, I apologize. Ding dong. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this audio file. Market research, it's a great thing to be an expert at. A couple of things to remember. Step 1 is absolutely critical, defining the problem. Another great opportunity in market research is doing more experiments, and don't rely on descriptive information too much. So many companies just collect endless information from online panels, and I always wonder about people who fill out surveys on over the phone or online panels, how much they're really considering and thinking about the answers they actually have. So that's always worth bearing in mind as well. Anyway, I hope this was useful for you. Good night.